last fight against the dragon, his sword broke and tells him that she wants to go to a nearby village which is filled by degenerates because her friend called Noel lives there and forges amazing swords. Alan tells her not to worry about it, but agrees to go into the village regardless. Meanwhile, back at Alan's house, his father and his brother Karen are talking about how their plan failed. It turns out that it was them who sent the monster dogs to attack the princess, as well as they made a deal with the dragon to kill the hero, as they want to take revenge on the kingdom. Karen starts shouting, but his father tells him to shut his mouth up, while he turns his attention towards an old butler-looking dude and tells him to get more information about the whereabouts of the princess. Back at the village, Alan is shocked to see the area filled with all kind of demi-humans roaming around the area while he finds his way to Noel's house. Inside, they find her lying on the floor, which gives Lisa a scare, but it turns out that she was just exhausted after working all night. Lisa heals her back up, and afterwards asks her to make a sword for Alan, but she outright refuses, claiming that she has a lot of customers who want their swords polished and fixed urgently. She then asks what happened to his original sword, which Alan then shows to her. She looks at him with disgust and claims that she can never forge a weapon for a guy who can't take care of it. Lisa tells her to check it once, so she uses her special abilities to see how it broke, and realizes that this sword was used perfectly to its full potential, and only then did it break. This changes her mind, and she agrees to do the job for him, and then kicks all of them out so she can work in peace. After that, the three of them decide to go inside the town to get a lodge to stay at night. But it turns out that a girl wearing a very dumb dress has been spying on them, who turns out to be working for the old butler guy. She tells him about what she saw, but he is confused because there is supposed to be only one useless female guard with Lisa, and not another guy. After spending the day in the town, Alan decides to sell the dragon scales that he scavenged at the Adventurers Guild. A bit sad, Alan walks down to the Adventurers Guild and goes over to the counter only to find another furry receptionist. He gives over the dragon scale to her and asks her to trade it for money, but this thought has never seen a red dragon scale in her life and starts shouting like crazy. This attracts the attention of the old butler alongside the lowly, who go up to Alan, and the butler starts asking how he got the scale. Alan tells him that him and his party had a fight with the Red Dragon King and were able to win it, and that's why he got the scale. The butler uses his skills to check his level and realizes that Alan is a level 1 loser, so he asks whether the hero was in his party. Alan truthfully replies saying that the hero was in their party and together they defeated it. Butler seems to be satisfied by it and wanders outside, where he tells the lowly that the guy is a complete nerd who can't even cut his own steak, let alone kill a dragon. But the lowly is still apprehensive and claims that she feels like he is hiding something. The next morning, Alan and party go back to Noel's place to check up on her, only to find her down on the ground unconscious once again. Lisa helps her back to consciousness while she tells Alan that his sword is ready. Alan picks up the slender blue blade and claims that it definitely is one of the best swords that he has ever seen, and immediately the thirsty elf starts telling him that she wants him to try it outside. Lisa immediately puts a stop to it, forcing Noel to rest before doing anything, but after that they head outside into the forest to try and slay some monsters. On the way they start talking and Alan asks Noel why is she a swordsmith as it is usually done by dwarves. Noel tells him that it is because she lost her family when she was a young elf, and while wandering through the forest, she ended up being saved by a dwarf named Vanessa who was more manly than you. Vanessa then took care of her, but then an unfortunate accident happened and she lost her forever. Before she could explain further, the butler showed up once again with the lowly inside the forest for no reason, and started asking whether he is here to kill monsters. But Alan tells him to stop acting like a stalker SSO. The butler leaves quickly. Alan goes further and finds some monsters that he easily destroys with his new sword, cutting them to shreds, which seems to be a good enough test for the sword. But this thirsty SSO Noel is still not satisfied and claims that they should kill some stronger monsters and drags him deeper into the forest. Suddenly Alan stops and uses his magic eyes before using his sword to slash away the magic barrier in front of him to reveal a giant wolf-tiger abomination that gives Noel some post-traumatic Down syndrome as she realizes that this is the thing which killed Vanessa, so she asks Alan to slay it immediately, while Alan stands there confused not knowing what the right decision to make is. Noel starts remembering about the past, and how she was horribly neglected when she was young. Even though Vanessa took her back to her home, she hardly ever talked or cared for her, and spent most of her time hitting the blade over and over with a sheer sense of determination in each strike. Noel tried to get Vanessa's attention in every way imaginable, as she shouted her name again and again to no avail, and even when she wanted food, she would get no response. This pissed her off a little bit, so she would go and eat whatever she could find in the house. But even after that, she would get the silent treatment from Vanessa, who kept beating away at the blade like a clockwork. At last, Noel tries to do something really drastic and picked up a sword before losing her balance and falling over all the other tools. But despite that, Vanessa didn't even look at her once to make sure she is okay. She ended up sleeping at the table, and when the next morning came, Vanessa finally completed her blade at last. And only then did Noel see something resembling a smile on her face. Finally, she snaps back to reality and with tea-filled eyes, tells Alan to destroy the creature as he was the one who killed Vanessa. Alan refuses to do anything, as the beast is not trying to harm them. In fact, it is far away from human settlement, peacefully sleeping and minding his own business. Hearing this, Noel grabs the sword out of Alan's hands, and with clenched teeth, runs towards the beast to land a killing blow, only to be stopped by Alan as he warns her that this will be of no use as the beast has a protective spell around it which doesn't let an attack below a certain level land on it. According to him, they will need a sacred sword if they want to hurt the monster, but Noel tells him that her sword is good enough to be considered a sacred sword. Alan tells her that her sword is nowhere near the level of a sacred sword, and no matter how hard she tries, the blade won't even make a scratch on the beast. After saying that, he starts walking away, telling her that she could do as she pleases. The next evening, he goes back to the town and meets up with Lisa and Betty before telling them the entire story about what just transpired inside the depths of the forest. Lisa is confused about why a great monster would be hiding inside the jungles doing nothing, but Alan claims that he suspects someone intentionally brought the monster in this area as they used a spell around the area which made the beast invisible to naked eye. He then turns towards Lisa and asks her what was the real reason she wanted to come here, as he doubts she will come here just to try and create a sword. Lisa smiles embarrassingly before revealing that he is right, and they came here to investigate the murder of the general of their army. According to her, the general was a very righteous and good man, but one day, he was found assassinated inside of his own home, with no signs of any intruders and zero evidence apart from the fact that the killer took the general's head with him, leaving the body behind. Betty suspects that this was the work of a demon, as no human possesses this skill, but they have no idea why a demon would go out of its way to kill the general so secretively. Meanwhile, inside the forest, the lowly checks up on the monstrous wolf, but is confused how can a normal human being like Alan destroy the invisibility barrier she put so easily. She then heads back to the town to meet up with the butler and gives him the report. The butler claims that this town is boring and he wants to leave, so he tells the lowly to go and kill the princess as well as the elf Noel, which surprises the girl. The butler notices it and walks back to her, telling her that she has no choice as a slave collar appears on her neck. That night, Noel starts working on the blade once again after Alan gave her a bunch of information about what the problems are with the blade, and this time she was determined to produce a blade that could be rivaled by none. She keeps hitting the blade just like Vanessa did, but ends up getting exhausted and sleeps right where she was. In her dreams, she again witnesses the events that transpired that horrific day when their home was attacked by the monstrous wolf, alongside the butler who wanted to remove Vanessa from the earth just because she was trying to make swords that could rival the sacred treasures. The wolf shoves her through the house as she slides back, but manages to stabilize herself before rushing in for an attack. But to her surprise, the moment her blade touched the wolf, it shattered into thousands of places while the wolf tore her apart with her sharp teeth. With blood pouring down his teeth, the monster turns around to finish Noel, but suddenly a huge bolt of lightning shocks him, and the hero presents herself in front of Noel. The wolf doesn't really care and tries to attack her, but she shocks the monster once again, which it shakes off as if it was nothing before attacking again. The hero counterattacks and manages to slash the monster across the face thanks to her sacred sword, which scares the butler enough that he decides to run from the scene. The hero apologizes for not being able to save Vanessa, but Noel is distraught because even after Vanessa put all her hard work in that blade, it simply shattered on impact. She cries her heart out, vowing that she will make a blade which is better than a sacred sword. The next morning, she wakes up feeling much better and lighter. She wonders whether Lisa healed her and comes out to check, but finds no one, so she gets to her work again. While it turns out that Alan healed her at night to make sure she remained healthy. Later that day, she finally finished the sword, and this time confident that the sword was strong enough to compete with a sacred treasure, she wanders out at night all alone to try and kill the monster. She finds the wolf still sleeping and tries to spring up on it, but the wolf senses her and hits her away into a tree. She barely manages to stand up after that when the butler appears, commending her for her durability, as most people die when hit by the wolf. She once again rushes towards the monster, but with the power of bad animation, the wolf manages to dodge and kicks her in the back. The butler tells her to say her last prayers, but just as the monster was going to kill her, Alan appears in the middle and slashes the wolf away. The butler laughs and tells Alan that this was his plan, as it turns out that the loli was entering the princess's chamber to finish her in her sleep, but finds her bed empty. Immediately, Betty and Lisa call her out from behind, as thanks to the barriers put by Alan, they can see through invisibility spell. The loli immediately tries to attack, but Betty intercepts her and after a bit of back and forth, pushes her back. She was about to land the finishing blow, but the princess stops her, and using this to her advantage, the loli hits Betty on the head and grabs Lisa's arm, but stops right before killing her. The princess realizes that this girl is being forced to fight when Betty hits her on the head and knocks her out cold. Meanwhile, the butler orders the wolf to kill both Noel as well as Alan, but unlike what happened with Vanessa when the wolf attacked Alan, he was able to slice through him without his sword breaking. The wolf dies immediately, and fearing for his life, the cowardly butler immediately runs away. Alan carries Noel back to the city where he meets up with Lisa, and they head up to interrogate the loli. They end up learning that she was enslaved when the butler raided her village and killed everyone, so she had no choice but to work for him as she has no home. This reminds Noel of her own childhood, and similar to how Vanessa took her back home, she walks up to the loli and frees her from her bounds, claiming that she will take the loli back to her place and that they can live together in her home. This makes her really happy and she starts crying, which solves most of the problems, but Alan is still not done and wants to finish the butler forever. He goes out inside the forest alone once again and uses his special attacks to try and find the butler, but it turns out that while he was hiding behind the mountains, a demon ended up finding him and killed him before leaving the place.